Thank you for being so punctual. We're going to start with our second web conference of the course International Business Management. To those who don't know me, I'm the course director, Ángela Piedad Suárez Torres. And we have a course tutor that is Professor Javier Gerardo Vivas Prieto. The class plan for tonight, after the presentation, we're going to talk about competitive environment in international business, characteristics and types of competitive environments. And we're going to give some examples. If you have something to share with us, or if you have any doubt, or if you just want to participate, just raise your hand and I'm going to be checking. First of all, we're going to talk about what is the meaning of a competitive environment, which refers to the dynamic system in which businesses operate and compete against one another. It encompasses various external factors that influence a company's ability to compete effectively, such as market structure, number of competitors, and customer preferences. So, in other words, the competitive environment is something that we're not able to manage and control. So it refers to those external elements that we are facing in an international market where we want to increase the increase or to have the opportunity to put our product or service in a different or international market. Is the environment where we're going to find those companies who are going to be the competition for us. So there are so many elements on this competitive environment that we always need to be aware that they are there and that we have to adapt to them, to understand and to consider them if we want to be part of that market, if we want to compete in that market. So it's not just about the consumer, but also the structure that the market has. How are we going to be efficient in that competition, in that process? How many competitors do we have? And of course, to recognize the profile that every one of them have. So we need to take a look at different elements that are very important in the international markets where we want to get to put our product or service. There are some key characteristics that we need to consider. So first of all, we have the direct competitors. So are those companies who offer products or services very similar to those that we are going to offer. An example is the case of Pepsi versus Coca-Cola, which are sodas with almost the same characteristics. So those are direct competitors. In the case of, for example, mobile phones, we have the different companies. So that's one of the first elements that we need to identify who are going to be our direct competitors, because it's like the main competition that we're going to have, and we have to look at the characteristics of the product to be able to find the difference and to find the advantage that our product or service is going to offer regarding the direct competitors that we're going to have. And in the other hand, have the indirect competitors, so like which refers to business that provide substitute products. In the case of fast food, we're going to see examples like pizza versus sandwiches, coffee versus tea, and they target the same customer base. So first, we need to look at the direct competitors that we have and also to understand how the market flows and to find out which are the indirect competitors that we may find in the process. After identifying these the characteristics of those competitors that we're going to have, we need to understand and to identify the types of competitive environments that we're going to face in the process. First of all, we have the pure competition, which is characterized by many firms that are offering identical products with no market power to influence prices. So prices are determined by supply and demand. In international markets, this often applies to commodity goods like agricultural products or raw materials, where global suppliers compete on price and efficiency. So that's the pure competition, identical products, and they just flow according to the supply and demand trend. And that's the trend that defines the prices. So in this case of pure competition, most of the customers, they just look at the price, and that's the difference that they're going to find. The easiest way to understand this pure competition is when we go to the supermarket, to the groceries area, where you're going to find, or maybe in our case, better to see the market, Plaza de Mercado, when you find the same product in different places, and you're just going to find the one that you prefer with the better price for you. But it's the same tomato, but you just decide according to the physical characteristics for your taste and of course the price. So those are the elements that you're going to look at the product, and that's the explanation or an example for pure competition. The second type is the monopolistic competition. This monopolistic competition features many firms that are offering differentiated products with unique features or brandings. Businesses set prices independently, but face competition from substitutes. In the case of international context, this is common in consumer goods such as smartphones or fast food, where brands like Apple or McDonald's emphasize product differentiation and a marketing to attract global customers. So when you go to the market, you're going to find this monopolistic competition. You're going to find similar products with some differences that make, of course, the difference on the market and make the consumer to decide from one to another. So that's the case of this monopolistic competition. In the third type, we find the oligopoly. The oligopoly is a small group of dominant firms that control the market, often collaborating to stabilize prices or outputs. There are examples that include global tech giants such as Google or Amazon, or energy conglomerates where market power is concentrated among a few players. Another oligopoly maybe that we can find is like the main companies that produce aircrafts or airplanes. So is a group of very huge companies that we have to consider, but it depends on the market that we're going to face. In the case of a small, medium business, which is the traditional size of the companies, for example, in our case, in our country, we're going to face more like pure competition or monopolistic competition. Oligopoly refers to a huge companies or conglomerates that are across the globe. So in this case, um, we should have like a very innovative company, model of company to be considered or analyze an environment of oligopoly to face on this international environment of competitiveness. And the last type of environment is monopoly. I think that all of you have a clear idea what's the difference between oligopoly and monopoly. In the case of monopoly, it's a single firm that dominates the whole market with no close substitutes, often due to legal barriers or exclusive resources. In the case of international business, monopolies are rare, but may exist in regulated sectors like utilities, state-owned energy providers, or patented technologies. I would say, for example, here in Monopoly, Airbus, like there is just one or two companies who build those huge airplanes for passengers. So it's like one or two companies that have the the knowledge, the technology, innovation, the research to have the power to build those airplanes, huge airplanes, mainly to transport people for commercial business. So, of course, if we're thinking about our small, medium sized company, in the case of monopoly or oligopoly, it will be more related maybe with the state-owned companies, which are very big, or sometimes those huge companies, for example, communication companies that are bought by the states may face that kind of environments of oligopoly or monopoly. But in the medium or small and medium companies, such as those in general that we find in our market, that we have to consider, or we're going to consider to take those products or services abroad, we're going to face more types of pure competition or monopolistic competition. I don't know if you have any doubts or question at the moment. Okay, Dennis, thank you. Well, there are some factors that we have to consider. Just give me a second. There are some factors that are going to be very influent on the competitive environment. And those are the elements that we have to look for when we're going that market research to analyze the market where we're considering to put our product or service to the customers. So in this process of recognizing the competition that we may have, we need to know the number of sellers. if there is a market that is very competitive and maybe has different type of sellers and a huge number of sellers, we need to identify the space that we're going to have if we find any place where to impact the market or get a place in the market. So of course, when we do that research about the market, we need to be clear on the knowledge of how many sellers are in the market that are going to be our competition, and not just only maybe the direct but the indirect also, because that's very important. That's very important. It's a very important information that give us that feedback to be able to decide if we're going to find that place in the market, or if it's a market that is already full in that product or service that we are thinking to offer. So that's really, really important. Product features, of course, once we find that we may have the possibility to get into that market, we're going to consider the characteristics of our product regarding the competition that we're going to face, and of course to find out what are the elements that make us different. What's the advantage that we're going to offer to the consumers? How are we considering that we're offering a solution to a need that the customer has? So if we're going to create a need for the consumers to be able to buy our product or service. Sometimes that's it. Sometimes we may find that the market doesn't have something like the one we're offering, maybe on services or even products. Then we have to analyze how are we going to create the need on the customer to get our product or service. So it is very important for us to have a real knowledge about the product features that we have, the characteristics, and of course, once we have a real knowledge about the consumer, we have the consumer profile very clear, we're going to find out what's the place on that market that we can get from the number of sellers and of course the characteristics or features of our product or service. Another element that we have to consider is the barriers to entry. Because sometimes we found that, yes, of course, there is a place for us in that market. There is an opportunity that we can take advantage of. The product or service, it has the features that the customer is looking for. The characteristics are those that some consumers are looking for. So it's an opportunity that we need to take. But then we go to the barriers of entry, and then we may face some troubles because maybe the other country, is asking for special requirements that maybe we don't feel, or the product or service needs to fill some requirements that we didn't consider before. So all these legal and sometimes not tariff-based requirements are very important for us to be considered, because there are so many different elements that we can find. In one of the examples, for example, I'm sorry for repeating the word, is the possibility that we, the Colombians, we have to produce some vegetables and export maybe to the United States. So, for example, we can produce broccolis here in Colombia with a very good quality, and export to the United States. but sometimes there is the opportunity, there is the place in the market that we can fill. The characteristics of the product are perfect for the market, but we have some barriers to entry. What kind of barriers? For example, the process of production and harvesting of broccolis, because sometimes, if you know, in the countryside, in our countryside, when we see the people that is harvesting in the countryside, we'll see that there are men, women, and sometimes we see some children working on those. That the conditions of work are not like the perfect conditions according to a first world country. So those are the elements that, according maybe to labor requirements and human rights and that type of regulations, the other country, in this case the United States, is going to ask for. For example, one of the regulations says that the place where the people is harvesting those broccolis requires the access to toilets for the people who is working there. So if you go to countryside here in Colombia, where the people is harvesting onions, carrots, broccolis, you know that there are no toilets available for people. So there is one element that you're not going to be able to explain to the buyers that you don't have those facilities for the workers, for the employees. Some other trouble that you find children in the harvesting. Sometimes they're working or sometimes they're with their parents, but those are elements that legally are not accepted in the United States in the process of harvesting, for example, broccoli. So it is very important for us to consider that those elements are going to be considered like barriers to entry, like legal barriers that we're going not to be able to fill. And then we don't have that chance to export broccolis to the United States. It's just an example that was real. Exactly, it was real about the possibility to export broccolis to the United States. But in this case, we see that there are so many other elements, external elements from the precise process of production that will make us face some troubles in the process of entry legally to the other market. So those are things that we need to learn. So that's why we need to make a really good research about not just only the customer profile and the market and the possibilities that we have there, but also the legal requirements that we as a company need to fill to put our product or service in another country. So those barriers are very, very important to consider. And those barriers are not those regarding the quality of the product or the service, but the process, the people, the labor conditions that we have in the company, so on. And fourth, the fourth factor is the price discovery. The price discovery, of course, is that we need always to be clear about the price that our product or service is going to have in that market according to the cost that it has, considering all the costs increased through the process of logistics to put it in the new market, and of course, all the elements that are considered in the cost of the product or service. So we really need to have a very good budget regarding the cost of production and the price that is going to be available in that market, regarding, of course, the competition that we're facing, the other competitors that we have, the quality of our product or service regarding the competition, And of course, the profile of the consumer, because if our product is going to be very expensive and we're arriving to a market that the people doesn't have that high level of income, so we're just considering a market that is not going to be good for the future of our business. So those are very important elements or factors that we have to consider when we are analyzing the environment of the market where we're going to put our product or service. I don't know, do you have any question by now? Do you understand everything that I'm saying? I'm trying to speak not that fast. Well, there are some key considerations that we need to consider, key considerations in international context. According to these factors, there are some other elements that we also need to be to get to know very well, to see if it's possible for us or if we have an opportunity to get into that new market that we're trying to get. So those elements in the international context are, for example, the economic and political factors. As I was saying in the price discovery, we need to analyze, of course, the income that the people used to have, so we can see if our product is going to be viable to be in that market or no, according to the price that is going to be on the market, of course, in reference to the competition that we're facing. So the economic and political factors, and they explain that the competitive environment, it's going to be different from country to country according to the GDP, the gross domestic product, the infrastructure, and the regulatory policies. There are so many elements that are going to define that capability that the people have to buy things, products or services in the market according to the income that they have. So the economic and political factors are very important. Political factors, of course, regarding in the case of exporting, the political factors are very important to give us the certainty about getting paid from the buyer of our product or service. Why? Because sometimes in the case, for example, if we go back to history, when Venezuela had the election of President Hugo Chavez, for Colombia, Venezuela was the main economical partner that we have. So most of the Colombian companies used to sell products and services to Venezuela, and there was a very strong economical relationship and commercial relationship with Venezuela. Once Hugo Chavez came into the power, things changed, the economy changed, the political environment, the political factors changed. And in this process of change, the companies who used to buy products from Colombia, they start to have troubles to pay those products. So that meant a problem for Colombian companies who were sending products to Venezuela because of the political features. They had a higher risk of losing that money. So those are the political factors that we have to consider. The political situation of a country is going to determine the risk that we're facing in the commerce that we're considering in a country. So that's why there is an international index that show like the level of risk of the economy in every country according to the politics that are in a country. So that's very important for every country to show that they are safe to make business with, because sometimes the international investment is going to be stopped because the risk is going to be higher to increase. So the economic and political factors are very important in competition in the international market. And of course, those are the elements that we have to look at when we're considering to export or to make some business abroad. Another key consideration is the technological innovation that regards the adaptability to local technological standards and consumer preferences as critical for successful. For example, when we buy a mobile phone abroad, and we take it home, sometimes the plugin is different from the one that we have here. So when a company is going to export a product that needs to get connected to electricity, of course you have to consider that you have to adapt your technology to the one that the country has. Because if you pretend to sell the same thing that you sell in Asia or Europe, you're going to sell exactly the same here in Colombia, maybe you're going to have some troubles with for example, with the plugin. So those are tiny elements that we have to consider about the technology. For example, when we had the evolution in the mobile phones of 3G, 4G, 5G, yeah, you may have the chance to buy a 5G technology mobile phone. And then you come to Colombia, but the network is just for 3G. Even if your mobile phone is able for 5G, it's going to work with 3G because it depends on the network and not on the phone. The phone has the capability to run through 5G, but the infrastructure that the country has is just for 3G. So those are the examples where we have to consider the technological innovation of our product regarding the market where it's going to be put in. Third, we have the strategic differentiation. The strategic differentiation is about the companies that they must leverage unique value proposition, like maybe the price, maybe the characteristics of being more sustainable with the environment to stand out in the global markets. For example, in the case of the automobile manufacturers that operate in the monopolistic and competitive environment globally, competing through brand loyalty and product features, while agricultural exporters face pure competition based on price and supply chain. Like the differences that we have between the markets, the characteristics of the products, and what are the elements that make them different from the others that they have on the competition environment. Now we have to talk about the competitive strategies in this international business. What are the strategies that we should consider in this international business, of course, to be successful and to be able to compete in the market that we have already chosen? So first of all, we find the global standardization strategy. This strategy focuses on achieving economies of scale by offering standardized products across international markets. And of course, it is ideal when when there is a cost reduction that pressures, and it's the cost reduction pressures are high and local responsiveness is minimal. The products are uniform worldwide, reducing production cost. In this case, we can consider more like technology, more about technology, because those are products that are sold everywhere in the world. And of course, the production installations, the production places are um, we find them in, of course, in countries where the cost of production is going to be low. So there is this possibility for the people, for the company to compete abroad, to compete in the international market with an standardized project and a standardized, I'm sorry, standardized product that is going, of course, to offer a solution to the needs that the consumer has abroad, all over the whole world. And of course, the utility is going to be high because you don't need to make huge changes on your product, because it's going to be sold the same product everywhere in the world. And it's just a competition about price, because your competitors are going to have like the same model of business. Um, Another example is Intel and Texas Instruments that produce semiconductors with universal standards catering to global industrial needs. So there are some few companies, of course, in the world that they produce semiconductors, and those semiconductors are used in cars, in mobile phones, in all technology that we use. So those are like, there is a need of semiconductors. There are some companies in the world that produce them, and they produce them in a low cost. So the competition is very high, and they're going to compete more on price in the international market. The second strategy regards the localization strategy. The localization strategy emphasizes adapting products and marketing to meet local preferences and cultural differences. This strategy is suitable when local responsiveness is critical, even if it increases cost due to customization. There is one example that maybe most of the times we use, which is McDonald's, that customizes its menu in India by offering vegetarian options and avoiding meat, beef, due to cultural sensitiveness. McDonald's is one of the companies that explains more this localization strategy, because they have always to adapt their menu to the local profile of the consumer. The most important difference that we see is McDonald's in India, because of course in India people don't used to eat beef because of religion and tradition. So in this case, they had to offer a vegetarian or vegan options on the menu. But if we go abroad, we're going to find that McDonald's offer different products in their menu regarding the culture, regarding the country. It's not the same menu that we have here in Colombia. We're not going to find it maybe in France or Germany or China. It's going to be different. Or, for example, Mexico. I guess that in Mexico you should have very spicy food. And of course, McDonald's needs to offer like spicy hamburgers. In the case of France, once in Easter time, they were offering a special sandwich with fish and another one with chicken, which is not very is not very common to see it here in Colombia, because we see the same menu the whole year. But in the case, for example, in Europe, some places, maybe because Easter is very important in their traditions, and they stop eating beef on Easter week. Maybe that's why they were offering through that time some sandwiches with fish or chicken. So that's a localization strategy that the companies use. Is more easy to see those examples on food because is one of the main characteristics that are very different from country to country. Well, third, we're going to talk about the transnational strategy. This strategy combines the benefits of global efficiency with local responsiveness, aiming to balance standardization and customization. It's just like in between the first two. The companies, they centralize decision making while allowing subsidiaries to adapt to local markets. An example, Coca-Cola, which maintains a global brand but adjusts flavors and marketing strategies based on regional tastes. Coca-Cola, the same soda that we can find here or in China, but if you really taste the soda, it's going to feel different regarding the country. And of course, in this case, it's about the sugar, like the sugar addition that is going to be higher or lower depending on the place of the world where you are. The flavor is going to be different. It's not going to be exactly the same. But if you're really a good Coca-Cola taster, you're going to find those differences between the flavor of Coca-Cola in a region and in another area of the world. And in this case, of course, they talk about this efficiency, but also the responsiveness. They go through a standardization because it's the same product from different parts of the world to different parts of the world, but of course it's going to have like a special touch regarding the area where it's going to be sold. Well, the next one, I don't know if you have any doubts at the moment. I've seen that Denise is trying to write down something on the chat. Just let me know if you have any question, okay? Well, the following talks about international strategy. The international strategy involves exporting goods or services while maintaining operations primarily in home country. It is often used by companies entering foreign markets for the first time, focusing on minimal adaptation. Maybe this one is more suitable in the case of some services. The example that we can see in this case is Netflix, which uses subtitles and localized content to cater to diverse audiences without significant infrastructure investments. In this case, we can see that is more related with services because sometimes when we talk about production, it's a little more complicated to just stay in one place, to just have the main company in one country and to export everywhere. Sometimes when the companies in production are very big, they just have like distributed in the whole world because always what a company looks for is to decrease the cost of production to be competitive in the market, to find better conditions of production, to have a better price to offer to the customer. So, but in the case of some services such as Netflix, of course, and some other services, we can see that, of course, they just have like one main place where the business develops, and of course, different channels to get to the customer. In the case of Netflix, of course, you're going to see that the portfolio that you find in Colombia is going to be different from the one that you're going to find any other place in the world because of course it's going to fit the needs of the consumers. So the profiling that we have about the consumer is going to give us the key to design the product or the service to be able to be competitive on it. So that's the international strategy. Next one, is the global network strategy. The global network strategy builds a robust network of suppliers, distributors, and partners across borders, enable companies to access new markets efficiently and respond to localized demands. There is an example of a company called Lian Fung, a Hong Kong-based supply chain management firm leverages partnerships globally to optimize production and distribution. And we can see it also in labels such as McDonald's, Starbucks, Burger King, which the same owners of the company are not the same distributors or all over the world. We can see that, for example, Starbucks is an American company, but those who has the name or the companies, the cafes of Starbucks in Europe, the owners are not the 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 owners of those cafes are not the same owners of the name as Starbucks. So that's a franchise, and of course, different strategies that create that global network strategy. And of course, when you buy a franchise, you have to follow some characteristics to get the name and, of course, to sell the same product, but the owner is going to be a different one from the main one. The next one is about the global entrepreneur strategy. The global entrepreneur strategy is a proactive approach focusing on identified and tap opportunities and unmet customers' needs in foreign markets. It often involves innovation and leveraging regulatory or price arbitrage between countries is going to be different according to the regulation of each country. And in this case, the example is more like Spotify, which is a company that adapts its music streaming service to meet diverse market demands globally. It could be a bit similar with Netflix because it's the same service all abroad, the same way to get to the customer, but of course the price is going to be different according to the profile of the consumer, and the portfolio of the product or service is going to be different according to the taste of the consumer. So in this case, Spotify, so like Netflix and Prime, for example, and the other similar companies, they adapt the product that they offer according to the profile of the consumer that we have. And it's according, of course, to the culture, tradition, and the taste that they have on music, in this case of Spotify, on TV series and films, if we talk about Prime or Netflix. And the last one is the global investment strategy. This one involves establishing a physical presence in a foreign market through investment such like subsidiarities, joint ventures, acquisitions, and it helps the companies to gain a direct access to consumers while benefiting from local resources or incentives. An example of this global investment strategy is Toyota, which builds manufacturing plants in various countries over the world to reduce costs and cater directly to local demand. Most of the automobile companies, they have that development of global investment strategy because we can see, for example, not only Toyota, but Renault, Volkswagen, and different others that they have some manufacturing plants in different places. For example, here in Latin America, mainly in Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico, to be able to cover the market of Latin America. So that's another strategy that the companies use because that reduce costs. Of course, in the case of automobiles or cars, um, it is easier to transport parts and not transport the whole car. So just to manufacturing those cars in every region makes it cheaper to get and more possible to get to the market. And if we see sometimes they have like a little some changes on the design according, of course, to the needs and the conditions and the environment of the market that we have. Do you have any question by now? All of these strategies um, enable the firms and the companies to compete effectively in the international market by balancing cost efficiency, local adaptation, and innovation, depending on the market dynamics and pressures. So those are like different strategies that the companies can consider regarding the capabilities that they have, the size of the company, and of course the objective that they have in the international market. Most of these strategies, of course, we have examples of very big companies, but those examples give us an idea of what type of a strategy may fit to the company that we are working with. So, of course, in the case of Colombia, we have different types of companies that already have a presence of the international market. And of course, according to the condition of the own product and and of course the business, how the business develops, um, we we can decide which is the strategy that fits each of the companies that we're working with. So we have to analyze what's the one that goes according to the needs, and of course the project that we have, or the idea or the mission or the objective that we're following for the company that we're working with. So it is very important to consider those elements because regarding the size of the company, the possibility that we have in the market where we want to get in, we have to analyze which of those strategies is going to be the one that is going to give us more tools to be able to be in the foreign market. Do you have any question by now? Today we've been talking about this competitive environment because sometimes we just consider, for example, the conditions of the product, the characteristics of our product, but we ignore another elements, external elements that are going to be very important in the process of exploring those international markets and that are going to that are we going to do, how are we going to face that international opportunity that we're looking for. Well, Valentina is asking me for the aporte digital. Could you be more clear about what you're asking for, Valentina, please? Remember that in our courses we have two synchronic moments that are very different. This one is Webconference, which is a space where we explain the topic, the subject that we're developing. And the other one is CIPAS, which is an synchronic space where we explain in detail the activity that we are developing. First of all, I want to know if all of you have, if any of you have any doubt about the topic that we were dealing today, that we were talking about today. Because I think that Valentina is talking about the activity that you're developing. In this course, we're going to be working with a simulator that is called Company Game. Through this weekend, we're going to work to open the activity, to give you the credentials to get into the simulator. If you want some information about the activity that you're now working on, you first of all, you need to read the manual of the simulator to have an idea how it works and what are you going to be doing. And then, according to the simulator, you have to design the synoptic table mentioning some information that is on the guide. And then, in the collaborative activities, you have to read and answer the questions regarding the consideration of dimension of servant leadership in intercultural context. It's a focal case study of UK executive in Japan corresponding to the unit 2, and there are 5 questions. So this is the activity in general that you have to be doing. There are 2 groups in this course. One group, which Professor Javier is the tutor, and the other group, I am the tutor. So I'm going to develop CPAS next week, but those students of Professor Javier, they had already a CPAS last Saturday, and already you have the you have all the information like the recording, and you also have the slides. So Valentina, I think that you really need to go through the guide, read carefully every single element of the guide, and if you have any question exactly about what the guide says, just let me know through Teams, is possible, and I'm going to answer your questions, okay? And please, it is important for you to be part, of course, of the CPAS also, because in those spaces we're going to give you answers about the activity that we're developing. Last information that I want to share with you is that I'm in the process of creating a semillero de investigación on international affairs, international business. So if any of you is interested to participate, to be part of it, you're all welcome. Just let me know through Teams. The idea of this semillero is to go through a process of knowledge, how to do research, how we can do research about a subject that we like. It's not that I'm going to tell you, you have to read about this. No, it's the student who is going to say, hey, I'm interested, I would like to learn more about cultures, more about the strategies of negotiation. I would like to know the Chinese strategy of negotiation. I would like to learn more about China or about, I don't know, India, Europe, the United States. I would like to know more about the culture, how to do business with them. So those are the possibilities that you have to do some research. I know that sometimes you don't have enough time for everything, but this is very interesting because it's a process where you're going to learn about about doing research, and you're going to be able to write about the subject that you really like. So if you're interested and you want to be part of it, you're welcome. Just let me know through Teams and I will explain to you how it's going to work. The semillero is going to be one in a kind because we're going to try to work sometimes in English, of course, to be more, to have more spaces to practice and to read, to understand, and of course maybe not compulsory, maybe to be able to write something in English and to be able to present it. So you're all welcome if you're interested in being part of this semillero de investigación, okay? I don't know. Denise says that there is everything is clear. Valentina, please check the guide again and exactly the doubt that you have, just write it down on Teams and I will explain to you, okay? Uh, the other students, do you have any other question? You'd like to share some experience? Is everything okay? Is everything clear? Well, you've been very quiet tonight. I hope everything is clear. Any doubt, please just let me know through Teams, okay? I try to answer you as soon as I can. I want to let you know, and of course, you know that I'm just part-time at the university, so I'm just connected in the mornings. But even if you write to me in the afternoon, I try to answer as soon as I can, okay? Have a good night, everyone. Any doubt, please just let me know. I'll be in touch, okay? Thank you very much and have a good night, everyone. Bye bye.